welcome to another video. Today, as you can tell from the title, we're going to be making a dish bag, otherwise known as a feast bag. And then for those of you who are in tribes that don't use dish bags or feast bags, then we're just making a bag. Really, you can use this bag for anything that you want to, but the intention behind this tutorial is to show people how to make a bag to carry their dishes for feasts. So real quickly, what is a dish bag or a feast bag? It's a bag, you guessed it, that you put your dishes in. Bowl, plate, fork, spoon, and knife, drinking vessel, whether it's a mug or a cup, and you take that to any sort of cultural gathering that you're going to be eating at, whether it's a feast or some sort of cultural camp, whatever kind of cultural gathering that you're going to be eating at. Even if they have things there to eat on, like plates and plasticware and stuff like that, a lot of people will bring their own. And a lot of people will bring their own dishes because they have special items that they specifically like to feast with. Sometimes those items will be like cedar bowls, cedar spoons, or copper mugs, or they're not necessarily special dishes, but they like to eat with the same dishes when they attend sacred food gatherings, if you catch my drift. Or you just like to not be wasteful with plasticware and paper plates and things, and you're like, I'll bring my own dishes so they can be washed. But like I said, this is essentially just a bag as well. So if you want to make this bag and not necessarily use it as a dish bag or feast bag, by all means, go right ahead. You can also put other items in it. You know, you can put your medicines in it, you can put your regalia items in it, or you can just make a pretty bag. As usual, all of the materials that I use in this video will be found in the description box below, and I'll quit blabbering. Let's get into it, shall we? So the very first thing that I want to mention is you want to use a material that you don't mind getting a little beat up, and that's because if you're going to be using this for dishes, then you're going to be, you know, carrying heavy dishes potentially. If you don't have access to be able to clean them properly, you might get your dish bag a little dirty as well, and you'd have to wash it. So washing it multiple times, you know. So with that being said, if you're making a bag for dishes, probably go with like a cotton or some kind of natural material that you can beat up instead of like a delicate material. And of course, if you're not making the bag for dishes, you're just making it for something pretty, you can totally use a delicate material, you know, like satins and jacquards and brocades and stuff. And with that being said, the next thing that you want to figure out is how big of a bag that you want. This is totally subjective, totally up to you, how big you want it to be. I would just recommend, you know, thinking about what dishes you're going to be putting into it and how much, you know, room in a bag is required to carry those around. So for this bag, what I want to do is make it 15 by 17. And there are two different ways that we can achieve that size. So the first way, which is what we're going to be doing in this video, is cutting on the fold. So this right here is where the material is folded. We're going to use this fold as the bottom of the bag and then make this cut right here. And once we have it cut, then we would sew down each side and we wouldn't do any sewing on the bottom. The other way is to cut two panels and then you would sew the three sides, and you know, that would be the bottom. You'd have a stitch on the bottom as well. And I just recommend, you know, do it on the fold, because then there's no stitch on the bottom of your bag. But you know, that's not exactly a deal breaker. If you want to, or if you have to put a stitch at the bottom of your bag, by all means, go for it. For both ways, you're going to want to add some more room at the top for folding it over and creating a channel for our cinching ribbons. And that again also depends on how wide of a ribbon you're going to be using, because sometimes you might use one that is smaller, or you might use one that is bigger. I would just advise adding another like 1.5 inches, and that should cover it. So for option number one, where we're cutting on the fold, What we're going to cut is 16 inches so that we have a 1/2 inch on each side for seam allowance by 18.5 so that we have, you know, the 17-inch bag with an extra 1.5 inches to fold over and create a channel. If you're going to be doing option 2, still cut it 16 inches, but we'll actually cut it 19 so that we have an 1.5 inch on the top to fold and make the channel, and then we have a 1/2 inch on the bottom for seam allowance. All right, so here it is. If you chose option 1, you should be able to just open it up and find that fold right there. If you chose option 2, then you should have 2 panels. And before we move on to assembling the bag together, it is at this point that you will want to add any ribbons or applique. Okay, so I now have my ribbons on there. I'm not going to be doing any applique. What our next step is now is to actually put the sides or the pieces right sides together like so. And then if you chose to cut along the fold, then we're just going to be sewing these 2 sides. If you cut 2 separate panels, then you'll sew the sides and the bottom as well. For both options, when you go to sew the sides, leave that top 1.5 inches open. So start sewing here, go down, same thing on the other side, start sewing here and go down. That's because we want to leave 2 flaps to fold over and create the channel for the ribbon. Okay, so now I have the side seams sewn, and I also took this to the serger just to fray block all of my edges. I would advise you do the same thing. If you don't have a serger, you can also pseudo serge, which is basically just taking a zigzag stitch to the edge of the fabric, or you can use other fray block methods that you use yourself. The next part now is to work on the channels. We're going to make 2 different channels out of each of these flaps here. So I'm actually just going to take this underside one and fold it underneath just to tuck it out of the way for now. We'll work on it in a moment. As you can see, there is this 1/2 inch open space here that is in the side seam down here, and it's just open up here. We are going to fold that inward, okay? And it might do a little bit of that, just don't worry about it for now. And then we will take the top and we'll fold it down so that the edge here meets up with the very bottom of this 1.5 inch that we left open. We're basically taking this 1.5 inches we left open and folding it in half. So take this and fold it down to the bottom. Definitely pin that. And as you can see, it's folding down 1 inch. So what we'll do then is take the rest of the top here and fold it down 1 inch and pin it. And then once you get to the other side, then you'll do the same thing. You'll fold that 1/2 inch in, and then you will fold it 1 inch down and pin it. Once you do that, then you will straight stitch all the way down and repeat the same steps with the other flap. I have finished sewing these channels. You should have these two little openings, and that is where we're going to be inserting our ribbon. To cut your ribbon, you're going to need 2 pieces, and you will want to measure it to be twice the width of your bag with a little bit extra for tying. So I just measured that, and then I'm just going to fold this ribbon in half and cut. Then I'll just go ahead and use this as a little example piece and cut the second ribbon. Set one of your ribbons aside for now, and then grab a safety pin or a bobby pin, anything that you can attach to the end of your ribbon, and use that to guide your ribbon through the channel that you've made, kind of like inserting an elastic band into a ribbon skirt. Once you've exited out one channel, then you will feed this into the other channel until you go back to where you started. By the time you finish that, you should have your ribbons coming out of the same side. Now you can just go ahead and tie those in a knot. Probably leave a little bit of extra space there. And I would advise tying in a square knot as well, just so you can be sure that that knot never comes out. And then of course, fray block the ends of your ribbon as well. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other ribbon. We'll be following the same steps that we did before, except we will do it the opposite side. So we went in this side and came out this side, and wrapped around the edge on this side. We're actually going to take the ribbon and insert it on this side so that it wraps around the edge over here. By the time you're finished inserting your ribbons, you should have ties and wraparounds on each side. Now we get to take our bag and fold it right sides out. When it comes to the corners, I know typically I will use like a skewer or a pen or something to really push those corners out. But in this case, I'm just going to use my finger because I'm not totally worried about the corner being perfectly pushed out, since this is a bag and we would like the corners to be nice and strong. And to show you how this ribbon business functions up here is you would grab the tied parts and pull, and it will cinch up the bag. And to open the bag, you just press it open.